Hi everyone, we're here at Leigh-on-sea and we're looking for Brent Geese. As you can probably tell from my hair, it's quite a windy one as well. We noticed a few people walking dogs along the little beach in front of the seawall, and the birds ignored them, so we headed down there ourselves. We've come down onto the foreshore here, and there's a lot of waders walking around. There's some red shank, oyster catchers, and there's a whole bunch of Brent Geese following the tiding. So we're going to hang around here for a bit and see what we can get. There's a common red shank feeding nearby, along with this oyster catcher. And when I zoomed in, I was surprised to see how much bigger the oyster catcher was than the red shank. I guess I'd never seen them side by side before, at least this well. Despite being more sheltered on the beach, I was still battling camera shake from the wind, which can be a really big issue when you're shooting at 3000mm equivalent. There was a second common red shank feeding a bit further along, and it was chased by what I thought initially was a black-tailed gobwhit, but that slightly upturned bill, along with those well-patterned wings, shows it is in fact a bar-tailed gobwhit. I'm not sure I've managed to pick one out on the Essex coast before, so that was nice to see. There was also this lone dunlin a bit further along too. Looking in the other direction, towards where the tide was coming in, another oyster catcher was feeding away, and behind it some dunlin. The tide was coming in fast, and the Brent geese with it, and you could really start to hear their lovely call. My attention was drawn to the small flock of turnstones, amongst which was one of another type of wader, a knot. The Brent geese started to move in front of us as the tide was racing in, and we retreated to nearer the ramp just to be safe. On the opposite side of the creek there were a number of little egrets, and a grey heron roosted up above the waterline. Brent geese are our smallest species of goose, and those on the Essex coast are almost entirely of the dark-bellied subspecies, a population that breed in the high Arctic of Siberia and other parts of northern Russia, and 10,000 of them overwinter on the coast of Essex. They come here to feed on the seagrass and the sea lettuce, a type of green seaweed, but they can also be found feeding on the grass fields in coastal areas. The mudflats were now almost completely covered by the tide, and the Brent geese had followed the tide in and moved past us. And the beach was shrinking, so we headed back up the ramp onto the sea wall. There were a number of turnstones sat on a higher bit of the beach, just above the water level, and by the sea wall some others were feeding away. As the tide came in, the numbers of both waders grew, gathering on the few areas remaining above the water. A couple came in very close to me. I even managed this close-up of one when it paused for about 2 seconds. Thank goodness for slow motion. One jumped up onto the platform on my right, before jumping back down. But on this platform there was also a pied wagtail. It had been sat on the fence, but jumped down and started to call briefly, before moving off to pick off prey from the concrete. The waves were now reaching the sea wall, but the waders were still feeding. The number of birds on that small remaining island had got quite high, but then the numbers dwindled as the tide came in further and the island started to shrink. And the light was getting duller, so we decided to go elsewhere. Well, the tide's come right in now. The rain's coming in as well, so we're calling it a day here at Leigh. But I mean, what a wonderful couple of hours. Loads of geese, plenty of waders, and yeah, it was good fun. It's only better than staying at home, put it that way, despite the weather. I'm not sure how the audio's going to come out on this, but the weather's getting pretty crummy. But we decided to come to Two Tree Island anyway. We found some of the Brent geese that swam past us at Leigh on our way to the Monty's Lookout Hide. The scrape initially looked pretty empty, apart from this lone grey plover. But a closer look revealed 2 of the islands were smothered in knot, which took off almost as soon as I started recording. They put on a bit of a show. Before most landed at the island at the back, and a few in the water slightly closer. Then they all took to the air again, and most flew off to roost on an island in the Hadley Ray Creek on the other side of the sea wall. There were some other birds left on the scrape though. There was another oyster catcher and redshank duo, and this little egret was sat above the sluice where the water was pouring in from the high tide. There was also a pair of avocet. They were moving around and feeding away as they went. And then a lone curlew flew in, and after a bit of a look around, it did a bit of scratching, then some preening, before dozing off. And one of the avocets came a bit closer, but the light was getting worse, so we headed back to the car. Well, it's been a good day out, isn't it? We've seen lots of good stuff.
Yeah, a bit grey, but yeah, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, and
Nice to get out for a few hours.
Yeah, isn't it? The grey day has now become an even duller, greyer day, so I think we're going to call it quits today. But
Yeah, call it a day.
yeah, but yeah, seen lots of stuff, and
You still might get something on the way back to the car, but
oh, who knows?
you never know.
Might be something in the car park.
It might be. Yeah, it might be.
But we're gonna call it a day now. But when we got back to the car park, I spotted a nice looking common gull, and while filming it I spotted a flock of gulls flying behind it. I went in for a closer look, and there were lots of black-headed gulls using the wind to hover over the high tide. And every so often they'd fly down and pick up a food morsel that waves and wind had washed in. The wind, rain and light were all pretty dire by this point, but we popped round to the slipway to finish off our day getting some footage of our target species, the Brent Geese. In the end, despite the bad weather, it turned out to be quite a nice day. Thanks to Nick for driving and suggesting the trip, and go check out his channel in the links below. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next video.